Hi there, my name is Kay Moon and I'm a twin flame channel and Western astrologer. And this is a video about the new moon in Gemini taking place on June 18th at 12:36 a.m. If you happen to be on the eastern seaboard of the United States, please check a time zone converter for your local time. Real quick, there's been a lot of interesting, fun, added intel that I've been able to add to these lunar updates via my private list. If you're not on it, the link to join is below. If you like to have kind of like added strategy on how to work with the energy of the lunar update, I don't tend to over email or anything like that. It's more a matter of like when something's up, I'll make sure that I share it, resources, places to look, additional videos and content, that kind of stuff I share with them. The June sessions are still available. As I said at the last lunar update, there is a finale to this manifestation season. And we're going to talk in this lunar update about how this season is shifting into the next season and what we're encountering and why the energy here and now is a bit different than the energy we had in the first 4 months of the year and what to expect next. But June really marks the finale of this season of major ability to call stuff in, shift timelines, parallel realities, that kind of thing. So if you missed Manifestation Mastery, my workshop on using astrology to manifest whatever you want, then I strongly recommend that we work together privately. There's the last 2 weeks of June are well, the last week of June is still available. And if you want to have some conversation about how to work with this energy and how to prepare for the upcoming Venus retrograde with your chart, definitely book now because we're going to get into the Venus retrograde energy here in this lunar update. I'm going to give you guys the dates and what to expect with that as well. And then lastly, at the tail end of this video, if you're new to this channel, welcome. I always do something called First Look at the tail end, where I take you from this new moon to the next full moon, which is 2 weeks away. And I talk to you about how the energy from here progresses into that and my first impressions of that full moon. So if you're new here, welcome. If you hear something that resonates, definitely subscribe. So here we have our new moon there in the sign of Gemini. Conjunct, what you see down here is Juno, or the energy that I read as divine feminine energy. She is the wife of Jupiter. We all have heard of Jupiter on Mount Olympus, but Jupiter had a wife. He wasn't, solo kicking it on the mountain. It was him and his wife, Juno, and I work with her to really bring her voice and the divine feminine voice back into the conversation for all of us energetically. You can see that we have, in addition to a conversation with Juno, we also have two sextiles to this new moon, one from Chiron, one from Pallas. And I'm going to break down what that means in a moment. We've also got a square to Neptune here, and a trine to Haumea, the creation goddess there. And this is a really interesting kind of energy that we have going on with the combination. What we look all of this together, new moons represent new chapters, new energy, or the beginning of a new cycle. But what we have going on here with this combination, especially because the loudest energy is Neptune, that's the most precise by degree with the new moon, is we have a little bit of confusion. Another way to place that is that we have a little bit of liminal space or overlap between worlds. And because Juno is so highly featured, and what Juno represents is relationship, she represents partnership, she represents marriage. She's also kind of a patron or a mother type of energy, patroness energy. There can be a bit of uncertainty, that's the Neptune piece, about the truth of the direction of things in a collaboration, in a relationship, or a connection. This energy is followed by and influenced by Pallas over here in Leo, and Pallas and Chiron in Aries. The Pallas energy brings a desire to kind of guard or put up the guard or be self-protective from Leo. There's a guard your flank kind of energy in the air, in the shadow. There's a bit of insecurities there from Chiron influencing this lunation, and self-protection there from Pallas. But in the light, all of this is really an energy of recognizing what within us is in the way of our ability to do partnership well. And with the Neptune square, a bit of motivation to jump into the up level required, really take a good hard look in the spiritual mirror, so to speak. There's a growth opportunity in this. If you can lean into what is presenting itself as quote unquote confusion, it's not confusion as much as it's a liminal space. And liminal spaces are always highly charged connection points where we can shift from one reality into the next. It's that fog place where if you kind of walk in, some of you may know these kind of stories. If you're familiar with any of the stories from like some of the British Isles, or maybe some of the Mamiwata people as well, where if a fog descends, it's really possible for you to go into the fog in one dimension or reality and come out in a completely different reality and dimension. And that's why we consider it very confusing, because the natural mind doesn't really understand how or why that could be the case. But with Neptune in conversation, like I said, from the angle or aspect we call a square, it gives us that opportunity to really kind of jump parallel timelines, move into different realities, if we're willing to do a little bit of work, a little bit of growth. And so right now, what's going on here in the kind of collective energy is what our own and other people's response to a lack of clarity in relationships. Do you shut down? Do you lash out? Do you catastrophize? Do you blame yourself? Oh, I knew I shouldn't have done that. And now it's going to go this way because I XYZ'd again. Man, I always mess it up. Do you blame other people? Every time. They always do this. I can never count on them to change. I'm just going to have to accept them the way they are. Do you story tell about people and create reasons to self-protect? Do you shut others out? Do you overshare confessional style? You know, kind of venting to anyone who will listen and throw yourself maybe a little bit of a pity party? Do you ignore the situation or freeze until the other person does or says something for you to respond to? Pay attention to your own reactions to any relationship where there's a lack of clarity, because the reaction is revealing where the growth is. Sometimes it's none of those things. Sometimes people will come in and storm the castle and demand answers. Other times you'll see people take steps that force clarity or force outcomes. Whatever the reaction is, it's going to be, like I said, revealing within yourself. And that's what you need to pay attention to, not other people's reactions, but your own, because we can control that. What we want to do is get conscious of our own reaction to a lack of clarity. I can't remember which social psychologist said it, but there was one who had said that the human mind has maybe it was Dr. Gabor Mate. I'm not quite sure, but the human mind can accept a yes. It can accept a no, even if the no represents something disappointing or an unwanted outcome. But the place where the human mind struggles the most is with uncertainty, with an unknown, with an inability to have a direct piece of clarity about the direction of things. And right now, specifically when it comes to our partnerships and this Gemini new moon energy, more than anything, there's a lack of clarity. And rather than take advantage of this for nefarious purposes, because you guys are just too good, too good for that. This is a wonderful time to take advantage of it for personal growth and self-empowerment, and to really take a look at, okay, well, where do I want my relationship with so and so, or my boss, or my friend to go? What do I want to experience here? And if the answer is I don't know that that's a perfectly acceptable answer as well. It's okay to not know everything all the time, even about yourself. It's okay to say, I'm in question about that. I'm not sure what I want. Give yourself permission to be uncertain here, and you're going to find that possibilities open up rather than forcing things to be always as they were, or needing things to have a determined and clear outcome at this time. Okay. The influence of this liminal space where things are unclear passes by about June 29th. Okay, so keep that in your mind. That's literally 10 days away, right? It's very close. But if uncertainty triggers you, and you know in the midst of uncertainty who you are, how you show up, the things your mind does, the things your mouth does, you have a tendency to say some things that you might want to take back after clarity comes in. If that's you, then this is a really good time to maybe, take some time, either get a reading or get some coaching or therapeutic support to really deal with what comes up for you when there's question marks. So that because we all know, we've all seen, we can all like look back and see at least one relationship where things were uncertain. And then it didn't take much. It took like maybe 24 hours for our mind to kick in, then our mouth to say something, and then our behaviors to follow. And in 10 to 14 days, the unraveling of an entire relationship can unfold with the seed in 24 hours of just what we call stinking thinking, that kind of thought processes that don't really have any grounded, logical, real basis. It's all based on kind of like wounds or projection, or, the things that a human mind will do to try to grab certainty in the face of uncertainty. And this is definitely not the moment to grab. So, if you are in a place where it's like, okay, yeah, I see my triggers come up, I see this stuff happening, you're ready to kind of focus on it, now's a great time to get a reading, because this is the very beginning of the Venus retrograde pre-shadow, which is going to come up here. I wrote that date down. That comes up on the 19th. And like I said, this uncertainty energy clears out by the 29th. However, it just, I don't need to re-explain it to you. You know who you are and what you do when the uncertainty shows up in important relationships and partnerships. And if that's not a way you want to be, now's a really good time to get some support around that. Okay. If you want to book with me, you can also do that over at kmoonastro.com. Okay. Now there's some other aspects here that are really showing us how to work with the light. And so I want to highlight some of those. That's this Mercury and sextile with Mars and Venus conjunct over here in Leo. I like that. That's creating an opportunity for positive actions, positive expectation, positive mindsets, and a focus on what we're passionate about, what we're excited about, what it is that moves us and motivates us toward creative outcomes, creative solutions. There's an opening with Gemini's curiosity and Mars and Venus's willingness to just to literally do a new thing and just see what happens in this energy. Okay. And there's a focus on thought and passion, like I said. And in Leo and Gemini, And with Leo and Gemini in play, it's all about finding, like I said, creative ways to maintain movement, maintain momentum in a direction that honors our sovereignty. That's that Leo piece. There's an opportunity for things to move in positive directions with a bit of self-love with Jupiter trine, that Venus and Mars conjunction. That's not Jupiter, that's Uranus. Here we go. Here's Jupiter speaking in harmony to that Venus Mars conjunction in Leo. It's about self-sovereignty. This Jupiter in Taurus is all about self-nurturing, self-love, self-care. And with Chiron trine Mars as well, there's a real opportunity to move from wounded to wise in this energy. There's a studied determination really in all of this to think better and do better with Mercury square Saturn in mutable signs as well, which I like to see. There's a little bit of like more disciplined thought. You may at this time be able to really catch some of your thought, like, damn, I didn't know I thought that. Look at me spiraling. Wow. I just went down the rabbit hole with this one. There's a real opportunity to like catch yourself in the midst of your own downward spirals or your own catastrophization or your own meaning making and storytelling that may in fact at this time be very unhelpful to you. This because of Saturn's influence, it keeps us from going too far into the realm of like flying off the handle into la la fairy tale land around what's untrue here. However, the lack of clarity, it's a breeding ground for the meaning making machine of the mind to do what it always does to facilitate safety for the human. And so our meaning making machine is set up to want to facilitate a sense of safety. We understand that what's known to us to be safe, even if we didn't like the way it felt. So it's easy for the meaning making machine to then project and insert, oh, this person must be doing that thing that I had experience with before. It has to be that. It doesn't have to be that. There's something else totally could be going on. Maybe they didn't get back to you because their phone broke or they lost their phone. Maybe they didn't get back to you, or maybe they don't have an answer for you because they're going through something, maybe they have something going on themselves that they're working with that has nothing to do with you. Don't project is my point here. It's not going to help you. It's not going to help your relationships. And there's a real opportunity to catch, because this Pisces energy here with Neptune and with Saturn, there's a real opportunity. Pisces is where projection happens. It's where image making happens. It's where reflection and mirroring happens. There's a real opportunity to catch what we're doing in the mirror and go, ooh, there's a hair out of place. I didn't mean, got a booger hanging out of my nose. I didn't mean for that to happen. Let me clean that up really quick. That's a horrible story. I don't like telling that one. Let me switch this story up real quick. Tell myself a better story with some of this stuff. So I like that opportunity to think better. And there's step-by-step movement toward a better mindset here, because that Gemini, where Mercury sits and Saturn is influencing it, the mutable energies, and there's a lot of it in this chart, like to move step by step. Maybe it might be 2 steps forward, 1 step back, then 2 steps forward again, then 1 step back. Net effect is still forward movement, right? With mutable energy. But it could just be a little bit confusing which way is up at this time. Okay. The thing to pay attention to is what's surfacing in the realm of that stinking thinking so that you can transmute, overcome it, or shift the thought patterns. Okay. It could be as simple as some pessimistic thoughts and expecting the worst and always waiting for the other shoe to drop and shifting that. But this may be something more complex, like entire worldviews that inform entire ways of perceiving a situation and then reacting to a situation, and an inability to see it from another perspective. In situations like this, the most powerful question I've seen that we can ask ourselves, where it just seems like things or people are like doing things that are really upsetting. The most powerful thing I have seen us be able to ask ourselves is, all right, well, what else could be true? Right? What if they're not ignoring me? What if they, um, what if he acted like that because he has this or that going on? Or, what if there's, a reason, my boss is bringing this and that to the table that I can't see? What if my daughter is doing A, B, and C because she has, something going on that I'm unaware of? What else could be true here? And doing that with ourselves and forcing that inquiry as a way of breaking up stagnant, unhelpful thoughts that are on a loop can really help us to recreate relationship in positive ways with the people that we're close to or that we're in partnership with at this time. This is going to be especially helpful for those of you who are in business partnership or collaboration with someone. It's also a great time to check in with folks and just say, hey, like I'm perceiving this, this, and this, and drawing A, B, and C conclusion. Am I right in this conclusion? Can you help me? Can you clarify for me what's going on and what's happening here? I'd like to understand. Um, Again, the reason why we want to do this is because of how loud Chiron is speaking to some of the planetary placements going on here. We've got Chiron in conversation with Mercury. We've got Chiron in conversation with the new moon. So that's sun and moon together. And we've got Chiron in conversation with Venus and Mars. So these are all the personal planets, all the ones that affect us and our emotional day to day. Chiron's talking to all of them in one format or another. And so with Chiron, Chiron's introduction to our energetic space very often is a sense of abandonment and rejection, because that was the beginning of Chiron's story. It's a space of like feeling like something must be wrong with me, especially because Chiron is sitting in the sign of the I am, that's Aries, due to some type of being different in some way. Something wrong with me, something different about me. I'm therefore abandoned and rejected. That's the introduction to Chiron's vibration and frequency. Only once we've worked with Chiron's energy do we get the wisdom, do we get the healing part. But the jump off point is always a trigger of some format, because Chiron is speaking to so many of these personal planetary energies. In fact, 100% of the personal planets. It wouldn't shock me if some level of triggers or like woundedness just, happened to just rear its head, especially in the month of May or at the beginning of June as we came out of the Mercury retrograde. Okay. This stuff is giving us the opportunity to heal, the opportunity to transcend, where you're in a position of to provide clarity to other people around what's happening for you. Do so. That's my invitation to you. Share what you can, share what you do know about where you're at, just to help others find their own peace and their own place and their own process and their own clarity. It may not fully compute for them why you've said what you said or what you're doing or why you're doing it until later, meaning the message sent at this time and the message received at this time could be two completely different things. But clarity is indeed accessible with the right self-examination in some of this. And healing is definitely accessible in the places where we're willing to work with that trigger of somehow feeling not enough. And then going in to look at, okay, well, yes, I am different, but why and how is that difference really perfect and giving me access to things that I otherwise wouldn't have access to, and leadership I otherwise wouldn't be able to facilitate. That's the gift of Chiron. Once you've really worked with transmuting Chiron's energy, you get an opportunity to step into leadership and to step into sharing your gifts with other people. So I think the last workshop I taught before Manifestation Mastery was like last year. It was early spring, late winter, and it was the how to transcend the wound and become the healer, like how to transcend your Chiron wound. So if Chiron stuff feels particularly up for you right now, and you're like, okay, yeah, I got to figure this out. Because one of the things that would have surfaced during the Mercury retrograde, that's now like we had this whole big chunk of time manifesting new, the first 4 months of the year. Then during May, the fifth month of the year, we got this, okay, great. You want all that new? Here's everything between you and that outcome. So we would have had a surfacing of everything that we needed to work through, transmute, and shift in order to facilitate that outcome. Now we're in month 6. With month 6 is coming this opportunity to begin to ground and solidify. You want something new. Now let's deal with the aspects of you that feel either unworthy or unable to have that something new, so that you can then shift your vibrational set point and frequency so that something new can really anchor and land here. Okay. So that's the progression of the energy from January to now. Okay. Like I said, if you're hearing something that resonates, I'm here at the new and full moon. Definitely subscribe. It would be an honor to have you as part of the channel. That way, when these lunar updates hit, you get them first. You don't have to come seek them out after something's happened. You kind of know how to prepare and how to work with the energy as it's arriving. Okay. Now, what's fun about this is that there's a larger theme around the closing of a season or a closing of a cycle. And like I said, for many of us, this is about the closing out of some of the old habituated ways of thinking. We've got this stellium here in Gemini, which deals with our thought forms and our communication, right? This new moon in Gemini, we're closing out a way of thinking and believing. Belief systems are more Sagittarius than Gemini, but we're closing out some ways of looking at life and perceiving stuff so that we can actually be appropriately aligned to the new stuff that we started to call in and cultivate in the first 4 months of the year. This theme of realignment, of closing out, of replugging in kind of our, where we're sourcing our reality from into higher vibrational places. So maybe we were plugged into a low vibrational source and we were getting low vibrational results in our life. Now we can plug into a high vibrational source and get higher vibrational results. That thematic is now the main theme of the remainder of the year. Okay. And this is a function of the way Pluto has locked into place, squaring the nodal axis. We've got a 90-degree angle and Pluto retrograde here. Whenever we have a planet in retrograde square to the nodal axis, we end up getting the entry of a crossroads, or the bringing in to our world a crossroads moment that is dictated by the planet that is in retrograde square. And Pluto is our retrograde square planet. With Pluto in retrograde square to the nodal axis, this crossroads is about Plutonian themes. Pluto deals with the death, afterlife, rebirth, the resurrection cycle, the movement of caterpillar to butterfly. It deals with the alchemical change of water to wine, lead to gold, literally becoming unrecognizably different to the people who know you, becoming a different person, living a different life, getting a life that is so different by the end of this year that it's unrecognizable to where you started the year. With this Pluto square the nodes placement, we have such a great gift, such a beautiful opportunity to close out seasons around our relationship to power that haven't served us. If there's been a constant kind of like, I just do what other people say, I'm divorced from my power, I just go along to get along, I'm on everybody else's time, I get to have no voice of my own, right? Everyone just needs me, and that's just a place of comfort for you. This particular year is going to be a year where your life is going to confront you. with the need to be in touch with your power in order to achieve any outcome of any sort going forward. That is one that brings you life. And that's what the North Node in Taurus, now moving into Aries, represents. It's the opportunity to be yourself and be fully alive. Okay. There's a need to confront some basic fears of what does it take in order for me to stand in my power, utilize my power in ways that are really balanced, fair, and just for me and for the other people involved with Pluto square the nodes. Anytime we want to confront power or access power, step one is we have to confront fear. And that's what Pluto also represents. So there's a real invitation on the table to look at the things that scare us in this and start to grapple with them, wrestle with them, make choices. That's what crossroads are about. You cannot occupy one path and another path simultaneously. You do need to choose. In 2023, the remainder of this year, kind of the thematic watchword is choice. We have a very clear and symbolic closing out of everything we've previously created up until this point, with Pluto square the creation goddess in retrograde conversation with the South Node at the tail end of Scorpio, and Scorpio really being about endings and completion and transmutation. We have and transformation, because the creation goddess and our creations has been dancing. She's been dancing with that South Node, which then opens up as a portal or a doorway or an exit point for things speaking to the South Node. What's speaking to the South Node is this creation goddess. So it's the exit or ending of many of our older creations that we have now outgrown. For many, this is going to be relationship stuff. Creation goddess is dancing in Libra, the sign of relationship or sign of partnerships. One of the things that I kept hearing as I was tuning into some of the channeled messages for the start of 2023 was this idea or concept of all people in their right places. And there will be a shifting of, circles of people, a changing of cast and crew here on the set, as people move to where they're supposed to be, doing what they're supposed to be doing, and you too do the same. And so as this shifting is unfolding, yes, there's a lot of uncertainty. Also, yes, there's a lot of need to be willing to confront and move into some new choices that allow you to be in the place where you really want to be, living the life that you really want to live, right? So that's an exciting energy. Not only do we have creation goddess and Pluto having this conversation with the South Node, we also have a trine to Ceres. Ceres has been in the conversation significantly with Pluto for a little while now. Pluto and Ceres have a very unique relationship. Ceres, if you look at the mythology, talks about bringing life to Earth, teaching humans how to move from hunting and gathering to a more agrarian, more stationary lifestyle that afforded humanity greater time to explore the arts, explore learning and science, and move from a place where instead of spending all of their time on gathering food and staying safe, they could be in a place where they could expand consciousness. What had happened was Pluto ended up kidnapping Ceres' daughter, Persephone, and taking her to the underworld. When Persephone left, Ceres lost it. She was bereft and beside herself. And as the bringer of life, her light went out, and darkness and plants stopped blooming. That's what happened in the mythology. And when there became a season that didn't exist before, that we can liken to winter on Earth, the ending or the completion or the dropping of life-givingness. And now Ceres represents seasonality in total, both the harvesting and the bringing in of life and the letting go, the ending of a cycle or a season. We have that in Ceres' storyline now. But because she's speaking so directly here with the one that represents endings and completions, that highlights her own ending and completion energy as well, bringing that to the forefront. So we have this very loud energy of closing out cycles, closing out a season. And I've spoken about this at length and several other lunar updates where 2023 is a year where we're now seeing this kind of two worlds sitting kind of on top of each other. They're pulling further and further apart at this time. Slowly but surely, the paths and where these two worlds were sitting on top of one another are now beginning to diverge. And what we are faced with as humans in this energy and creators incarnate is asking ourselves, what's the timeline we want to be on? What's the mindset we want to think? That's certainly all this Gemini energy, mindset stuff. What are the behaviors and actions we want to take? There's that Mars, Jupiter stuff that's aligned with the timeline we want to be on. Do our actions and the things that we're doing, the way we're spending our time on our weekends, on our evenings, are they lining up with what it is we actually say we want to do? Or are we actually spending our time doing things that truly maybe just undermine where we want to go, but are habituated to who we used to be, that we have since outgrown? And so that's a bit of what the question is on the table for us for the remainder of this year is, what path do you want to be on? Choose. And yes, that is going to require some endings. Not everyone is going with you where you're headed. You're not going with everyone in their life where they are headed. There is no need to burn bridges to cross them, right? Sometimes you can just let go. And give yourself and other people space and permission to evolve in the ways that they are being called to do. Okay. So that's some of the stuff here. It's a very relationship heavy kind of moon. There's a lot of shifting in the world of relationship and partnership, specifically business and romance, but this could also be friendship, family, neighbors, school groups that you're a part of as well. Gemini definitely deals with a lot of group stuff. So you may have outgrown a particular group that you may have been a part of. And it's time to release, your identity in that group so that you can step into your new timeline with the outcomes that you planted in the first 4 months of this year, the intentions and the seeds you set for yourself. Maybe time to relinquish and release some of the way you spend your time and some of the behaviors so that you can align yourself to the outcomes that you're stepping into. Okay. Let's see what else is going on here. The May Mercury retrograde, as I mentioned earlier, would have brought up where we are not yet ready to have what we want. We know what we want. We've intended it. We've called it in. The month of May and the Mercury retrograde would have been like, great, that's what you want. Okay, here's everything in between you and that, where we're running programs that are counter to our manifestation. And now we're just walking through the process of shutting down, closing out, undoing, and ending those programs and using the new programs. This is the equivalent of switching over from, like, let's say all your systems at work or in your business, all like everybody was running on Apple and or OS X. And now, for reasons, that are maybe above your pay grade, or for reasons that have to do with, your own ambition. Maybe you didn't even know you were calling it in. The entire company is now moving over to Microsoft and moving over to the Windows operating system instead of the Apple operating system, right? This is a switch in that kind of way of moving, you're plugging in, unplugging from one and then having to switch everything over. And there's like micro choices that go with that, right? Where am I going to save this document? How am I going to pull up that, spreadsheet? Where, can I run this program on the Windows operating system instead of the Apple operating system? Well, how do I get this one to work instead of the way I used to always? There's a lot of micro decisions that are now being called forward for us to make because, like I said, we're at the place where the paths diverge. The worlds are beginning to pull apart. And what we're now being asked to do is locate ourselves via these micro decisions on the timeline that we actually decided we were calling in the first 4 months of this year. Okay. Another way to put this is like, let's just say the quality in a grocery store nearby you has declined and a new store has opened up. Maybe it's equidistant, but it's in the other direction. The automatic habit of turning right to go to the old store instead of left so you can go to the new store has to be broken. Because it's not like the old store stops existing. It's not like those old networks, those old friendships, those old relationships. It's not like those things go away. They don't. It's just a matter of choosing a new thing and new behavioral habits that align with where it is you say you want to be. Okay. The best thing about the Neptunian influence, or, which can read as confusion, I'm starting to understand it more and more as liminal space, that space in between worlds, is that it opens up our capacity for change. It opens up our capacity to do a new thing, to put an end to one way of being that may be rooted in our shadow or our wounds at this particular lunar lunation. Like I said, Chiron is heavily featured. And it opens up an opportunity for us to be in a new way of being, to anchor in a new way that's really rooted into who we want to be, rooted in our wisdom and rooted in our love. So that's an exciting thing to see. I love to see it. I love to report on it. And that's what I got for this lunar update. Now, listen, I'm about to do first look. In first look, we're going to talk through the Venus retrograde dates, the shadow, all pre-shadow, post-shadow, everything you need to know. I'm going to talk through that with you guys so you know what to expect and what to look for. But if you enjoyed this video, definitely give it a thumbs up. If you're new, subscribe so that these lunar updates can locate you at the moment in which they're immediately published, so you're not catching the story late. Yeah, and if you're called or guided to, definitely book a reading, because in getting a reading, you'll have the opportunity with me to look at, okay, how do I work with this energy? Because yes, the wounds are up. Yes, the triggers are up. Yes, my stuff is going on. I really want to be in a place where I'm working with this energy in the light. In doing that, in a reading, we can talk through how to work through it in the light. Let's have a look at the full moon in Capricorn. Let me make sure I'm sharing correctly now. You share full moon in Capricorn. Okay, perfect. There we go. So the full moon in Capricorn takes place on July 4th, 7:38 a.m. If you happen to be on the eastern seaboard of the United States, this is my first time looking at this chart. That's why I call it first look. I'm going to give you my first impressions. Like I said, the Venus retrograde pre-shadow period would have already started. Okay. So anytime we have a planet that goes retrograde, the planet moves in this direction, then it moves back in this direction, then it moves in this direction. Okay. The first pass, when it moves in the first direction, that's called pre-shadow. And then the last pass, when it moves back in that direction, that's what's called post-shadow. The only part that's considered the retrograde is when it moves this way, it moves backwards in that direction. Okay. So hopefully, for those of you who are new to astrology, that helps explain this pre-post shadow conversation. Okay. This Venus retrograde with energy is going to be with us for a minute. So get comfortable. It's going to go down in the sign of Leo. Here are the dates you need to know. And then we're going to talk about the full moon in Capricorn. The pre-shadow begins on June 19th at the 12th degree of Leo. The retrograde, when it turns in apparent backward motion as it relates to how we see it from Earth, that is July 22nd at the 28th degree of Leo. Then we have Venus moving direct in September, on September 3rd at the 12th degree of Leo again. And then the post shadow ends. She gets back to the original point and passes that 28th degree on October 7th. So we've got Venus retrograde energy in full effect between June 19th and October 7th. That's a good roughly 4 months. So when Venus goes retrograde, things that can come up have to do with certainly money and love, also beauty. Okay. It is definitely recommended to not do brand spanking new things in money or brand spanking new things in beauty when it comes to that kind of stuff, or start brand spanking new relationships. Now, revisits, right? Color touch-ups, if you've already done maybe, I don't know, some sort of filler, I guess a lot of people are into that these days, or some sort of other beauty treatment. You've done that before, great. Doing it during Venus retrograde is great. New stuff, wait. It's recommended in classical astrology that you wait until after Venus retrograde is over. If you were like, oh no, I've already scheduled it and it took me a year to get it on schedule, just trust your life and keep it moving. Declare the best as your outcome. Don't try to make the planets run every part of your life. I don't. You shouldn't either. Okay. But certainly if you have option to give yourself a different time period, give yourself a different time period. Why not? Right. But if you don't, then trust your life. Keep it moving. All right. Now, other things, it is notorious that during a Venus retrograde, people can sometimes see people from the past that they either had financial dealings with or love connections with resurface. Most often, they resurface for closure or for recalibration. Sometimes it comes in looking like a renewal. And then once Venus goes direct, it becomes very apparent why it didn't work to begin with, what needs work in the individuals in order to be capable of either having that love resurface or another type of love resurface or another type of collaboration or partnership resurface. And financially, where there's debt, this Venus retrograde will bring it into perspective and focus and say, before you pass go and put your money on another thing, clean this up. This is when large bills that you didn't know you had can surface and become due. This is also when situations that didn't seem to have clear resolution, either financially or romantically, can resurface, and that resolution can happen. All right. So buckle up. It's going to be a fun ride. In Leo, we're talking also about collaboration and creativity partners. So these could be people who you've previously run projects with, or, if you create stuff with some people or created stuff with people in the past, this could be a period of time where you're creating with those people again. You may come together to collaborate during the Venus retrograde and then release once Venus goes direct, that kind of thing. It's going to be an interesting period of time as we move through it, because Leo represents self-sovereignty, and thematically, there's going to be a lot of conversation around figuring out internally what's best for me, for everyone involved in any of these kinds of circumstances. What's going to be my personal best outcome, best route to take, what's going to work for me. And not necessarily in a selfish way, just in a honest and truly assessed way of, I've grown. So based on where I'm at and who I am today, what is it that I can either give or contribute? What am I prepared to receive in exchange, right? Based on where I'm at. It's going to be a very honest Venus retrograde to the best of everyone's ability to know themselves. We're going to see a lot of truth come forward with this Venus retrograde. So that part is going to be really exciting. Now, looking at the full moon in Capricorn, and like I said, this energy kicks off as early as June 19th. The house in which Venus is going retrograde in your chart is going to be the house where you can expect to see said action. So it's really important to understand, know your chart, know your houses, etc. If you don't know that, you kind of want to prepare. Like I said, this energy is going to be with us for 4 months. I definitely recommend booking a reading to talk about the themes of the Venus retrograde and some of the larger themes of choice points and anchoring your new manifestations before we close out June. Okay. Now, here is our full moon in Capricorn. And again, we still have Juno heavily featured. Now she's rocking with the sun, and we've got Juno and Mercury together in the sign of Cancer. We've got our moon. This is not the correct time. I wonder where I sourced that from. It's the right day, but it's not the right minute, because the moon should be further back here at that 12th degree, but the rest of this is pretty dead on. So what's interesting about this as I look at this for us is this part, the thematics around partnership that we just talked about at the Gemini new moon carry themselves into the Capricorn full moon as a conversation around emotional truth and integrity. What's the real vulnerable emotional truth about where I'm at, how I feel, and where I stand on certain things? That's what's being asked of us to have some clarity about, and then to also communicate about that at this time. Thankfully, Neptune is no longer a part of the conversation in those aspects of tension that we saw last time. So there's greater clarity at this full moon in Capricorn. Not only that, but there's also with Chiron having conversation with this full moon almost in T square. There's it's as the fulcrum point. That Chiron energy is bringing forward a real kind of like need to step into some self-acceptance about where you're at in partnership and where you're at with yourself as it relates to other people. What is the truth of who you are, how you're different? And it's giving us an opportunity to go, listen, are you going to continue to tell the wound story? Like, we've heard it, we know. Or are you going to be able to tell, are you going to finally going to step into the victor story, the triumph story, the story of the one who overcame? Or is you going to continue to sing the song of, I was abandoned, I got done wrong, I've been rejected, I can't get over it, that's why I can't have relationships? You're going to have to make some choices around this. And this is for those of you who spent the first 4 months really manifesting around relationship, particularly. And it was, Juno and Venus were heavily featured in the lunar updates, the first 8 lunations of the year in January, February, March, April. We saw a lot of opportunity to manifest love, a lot of opportunity to manifest money, but specifically love. If that's where you're at, this full moon in Capricorn comes as a choice point around what are you going to do with the structures of your life that are sabotaging your new beginning, the structures that are both in your mind and in your emotional reality. It's going to ask you to get really real about what you need to do in order to step into some light and have light and live in light and live in love. So I'm excited about it. I don't love pressure from the universe, but it certainly makes it really clear when I'm out of alignment. Oh, go that way. Thank you. Thank you. I didn't know that was the direction. Thank you for clarifying, universe. Thank you, God. This is that kind of energy. The full moon in Capricorn lends itself to that particular type of like All right, let me tell you about yourself and where you're blocking love. It's going to show us that in some pretty clear ways. So I'm excited to know that more of us will get that download and that opportunity to overcome it. Hooray! Okay, peoples, that's what I got. You want a reading? You know where to find me. I'm at kmoonastro.com. If you already know you've got some patterns in love and you're like, I'm not trying to repeat that, especially if, there may be a second chance during the Venus retrograde with, another person or at love in general, you want to not have those behaviors, be the behaviors that sabotage you before sabotaging you again, then my recommendation is that we look at a reading, we look at your chart, you explain the pattern, I find the shadow, I walk you through how to transmute it to the light according to your particular chart, because it's not always the same for everyone who has the same issue. All right. I love you guys. This was so much fun. I'll see you at the next lunar update. Bye for now.